Yeah, so you guys have started chatting. I almost said Belgium is over in Kevin. Kevin is over in Belgium. And he told me an interesting story a moment ago about the Pope apparently being in town, and there's some kind of action in the sky of the black helicopter type. Well, at least helicopter. I don't know about black helicopter.
The Pope is staying in my neighborhood, like 200 meters from my house.
Wow. I mean, the
It
security
just
must
left.
be out of
There's been a
control.
helicopter flying over my house the last half hour. So
Wow. Yeah, I get
What's the
helicopters
security
flight.
like?
this morning, security was super lax. My son was on the street, took a picture of the car. It was a little Fiat, a white Fiat. It's a large motorcade, all black cars, but his car is like a little white Fiat. I couldn't believe it, actually. I was like, oh my God.
I
And it was very lax.
I thought he drove around in that perfectly encased.
No, it's a little Fiat. It was nothing. And he had the window down. He was waving. My son is a photographer, so he got a couple of good pictures. And so, but this afternoon, it was a whole different game. And they had police running alongside of the car. After Nasrallah's death, I think, they kicked security up a couple levels.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was surprisingly lax this morning. I was on a little balcony above, like a perfect sniper position. I was like, is anyone
Oh my
gonna...
goodness. That's kind of crazy.
Because I wanted to film it.
Like,
it was a good filming position too. So
you're like those people that had the lucky residence next to the Chicago Cubs, and they can rent out the rooftop to watch the game or something.
I love it.
Well, anyway, yeah, so I wanted to bring you two together. Kelley Vlahos, it's really cool to have you here. You've been working in this kind of foreign policy space and op-eding space for a long time. I mistakenly thought that you were at antiwar.com, and while you were featured there, you weren't like some kind of editor there or anything, but you wrote for the American Conservative for years, and you've been you made a lot of appearances on various I think the old Tucker Carlson, the one that was on Fox, for instance. And now you're at the Quincy Institute, where I believe Trita Parsi is as well.
Yep.
There's some real luminaries over there. And yeah, so I wanted to get your take on geopolitical matters right now, because obviously, we're creeping up on the exact, 1 year anniversary of the terrible October 7th attacks. And of course, Ukraine is still on the back burner. And those two situations are, they may feel like they're far apart. Like if you're in Lebanon or you're in Gaza or you're in Ukraine, you don't feel like those places are next door. But globally speaking, they're not far. It's all kind of Asia Minor, Eurasia. And so I wanted to just kind of get your take on what is Israel's plan going forward. I believe Netanyahu said that this would be wrapped up in a year, or very nearly wrapped up in a year. And it looks like it's only expanding. So.
Oh boy. I mean, people that are smarter than me that I work with, Stephen Simon, who worked in Democratic administrations in the National Security Council and in the Middle Eastern space, have unfortunately and depressingly predicted that what we are seeing here is Israel's consolidation over the West Bank and Gaza. That there is no interest in a two-state solution. And we know that if we bother to open our ears, we hear Netanyahu say this over and again. The people in his government say over and again that a two-state solution is no longer possible. Yet the Biden administration continues to say that they support one. And so there's this incongruence where we're still in a la-la land thinking that there is a peace process, when the Israelis have basically said very clearly that they don't want a two-state, and they're making every move possible, whether it be destroying Gaza and now bulldozing their way through the West Bank, continuing raids, allowing the settlers there to rampage into villages and terrorize the population, all with the end goal of taking it back over again and letting those people either move away or be left behind and subjugated into a one-state solution. This is what people are predicting now as they see the trajectory of the Israeli military from October 7th and through today, that they're there is an end goal to just basically entrench the power, to create a Jewish state, and no longer flirt with this idea that there will be a two-state solution and that the Israelis and the Palestinians can coexist.
Yeah, I get the sense that the hardliners in Israel are thinking, well, the only way out is through, and it's going to be very ugly, and our reputation on the world stage will be more tarnished. It was sort of just always kind of sitting out there with not the greatest celebration of their entire project, but now it's just it's going to be very ugly in the short term, but the world will get over it. Israel will come out stronger. But if the idea is also that they're basically at war with the entire Arab world, and to a broader degree just the Muslim world, which include over in Southeast Asia and whatnot. I think that's the largest Muslim country out there, Indonesia. Why do they believe that they're going to actually achieve kind of security rather than just have this constantly simmering resentment that could boil over for pretty much eternity by behaving like this? So I'm not so sure that even from their perspective, this is the wisest thing to be doing, this kind of escalation.
I think if you ask any military strategist, they would say, no, it is not the wisest thing to be doing, because what they're creating is a whole new generation of terrorism, resentment, and resistance to Israel. But I don't think that they're thinking in that long-term fashion. And you also have to keep in mind that they are getting $3.8 billion of US weapons a year. And the United States is fully committed to continuing that flow of weapons. So they have built a military industrial complex that makes them the most powerful state in the Middle East. And so I feel that they maybe have weighed those considerations, said, well, listen, we can maintain our security. We're willing to put up with what might be just like generational skirmishes, but the stronger that they get, the more powerful they get. And if they do create this one state and expunge all of A, destroy the troublemakers, and B, send as many people fleeing as possible to other countries, that they feel that that could be effectively managed. I don't know. I'm not a military strategist, nor do I have a crystal ball. But I think that their I don't know, their sense is probably problematic, that they can manage this. But if you go back, say 6 or 7 months ago, a lot of people have predicted that there would be retaliation from Iran, that Hezbollah would get the better of Israel, that proxy groups throughout the region would rise up and really challenge Israel. And what you saw was one retaliatory attack from Iran that was limited, and the US came and used its own missile defense to help thwart it. Other Arab countries rose up and helped. And so that signaled to Iran, hey, you're isolated in this situation. And, nobody, as much as politically the US has looked very facile, it still has the firepower and the resources to keep this thing going and to defend Israel. And I think that a lot of these countries and militant groups that you would think would be rising up right now are thinking twice, because they don't want to mess with the Western states that are defending Israel right now.
Yeah, I think Russia and China have more or less told Iran, we don't have your back here. I mean, it's kind of obvious why Russia wouldn't, and their hands are full as it is. And but to link Israel's situation to some of the domestic conversation here stateside, we talk about America's decline or something. Well, I mean, Israel must be banking on there being absolutely no decline, because if we're no longer if we no longer have their back, well, that actually is an interesting question. Are they screwed if we no longer have their back? I suspect yes, but then some of the operations that they're able to pull off, maybe with our intel, but like the pager situation, shows a certain cleverness and a tactility that I think maybe allows them to hang on longer than they think, even if they were no longer expecting continuous aid.
Well, I mean, you have to consider that this $3.8 billion has been flowing to Israel for decades now. And we have helped them build a military industrial complex that's fully entrenched and fully loaded for bear. So if suddenly we turn the spigot off today, it would take a while for them to get through all of, I mean, no doubt they've run through a lot of their stockpiles, and particularly in missile defense. And obviously the offensive weapons that they have been using consistently through the last 11 months to destroy Gaza, but they have their own technology. They have the ability to buy weapons on the global market. They have the ability to create to build their own weapons if they had to. So we have not only supplied them with hardware and know-how, but we've also helped train, and we've also helped putting the production lines into motion that they can use for the future. So yes, would it hurt them if we completely turned off the spigot? Yes. But would they still be able to dominate the Middle East in terms of their military prowess and the strategic edge that they have over their neighbors? Yeah, heck yeah. That's not going to change anytime soon. So I think personally, and so does the Quincy Institute, that we need to condition the aid at the very least, if not shut it off completely, because it is going to hurt us in the long run as a nation. We have contributed to numerous war crimes, possible genocide in Gaza. We have lost our credibility on the world stage. We are no longer a fair broker in any peace process that is left, if there is any. And we have put our own people and our own military assets at risk and in harm's way in the region. And I can't poll every single person in the United States, but my sense is that the American people aren't ready or willing to go into another war for another country, whether it's Israel or anywhere else. So we have to really rethink that special relationship between the United States and Israel and say, is this the best thing for American interest right now? And the Quincy Institute says no. A lot of realists say no, it's not in our best interest to continue fueling this war. And and unfortunately, I don't see the political will in Capitol Hill to do anything about that in that vein.
Yeah, Jacob Siegel at Tablet Mag, among other outlets, he seems to think that Israel's reliance on the U.S. actually handicaps it, and it would be more successful in defending its interests with no aid. I think that would be news to a lot of people. But I would love to make a point about that, because at the early part of this war, I saw a lot of conservatives or people on the right, like Vivek Ramaswamy, David Sachs, and others who had made that same argument. They had said, listen, it's no good for Israel either for us to keep funding them in their war in Gaza. Some of them, like Vivek, went so far as to make that argument, like, hey, we're tying their hands, and we're not allowing them to do their thing because we're sort of conditioning or minding them. We haven't been conditioning them. So I understand Vivek and others who are trying to make a restraint argument without pissing off the right, because the right has gone full-blown pro-Israel over this war. But I just don't think that is a believable argument to me. I feel like Tucker was probably a little better, where he just said, listen, it's not in our best interest. Let's take care of our own borders. Let's take care of our own people. Let's not flirt with another war in the Middle East. Let them do their thing. We'll do our thing, but let's just stop. And I think that's a decent argument coming from the right that I wish I heard more coming from conservatives. But this whole idea that we're tying their hands is BS to me, because we have done nothing to tie their hands. We have looked at the killing of women and children over the last 11 months, a starvation of an entire people in the Gaza Strip. Our own government knows it's happening.
And the Biden administration has turned a blind eye because it doesn't want to stop giving them weapons. So I don't know whose hands are tied, at this point. They're doing just fine.
Yeah, you've been on the Robert Wright's Non-Zero podcast. I believe you kind of came on my radar because in the last couple of months you appeared there, and and he's really good on this beat. He's constantly pointing out how Biden seems to be just sort of parroting Netanyahu talking points, at least either explicitly or implicitly. It seems to be accepting that framework. And it's just unfortunate that Biden is up there in age and clearly, and there's no way he's going to kind of backtrack. He's kind of locked in his worldview on this, which I don't even think is a strong view. It's just that for the entire time he's been in politics, starting in the 70s is when America started becoming kind of very very pro-Israel at every turn. Sometime in that time frame, and that's sort of when his career sort of took off. So his mindset is not going to change. It remains to be seen what happens with a Harris White House. I think Trump would be more hawkish, actually. I think a lot of the people who are on the Democratic side and critical of Democrat support might not see that. They think, how could it be even worse? But I think it could be. Not only not conditional, but positively affirmative and celebrated. I think it was what you'd get, the difference you'd see with Trump, but that's just speculation. Kevin, did you want to jump in on this?
Yes, 2 points. I think long term or even medium term, Israel sees the U.S. in decline, certainly militarily. And they're very powerful, superior to their neighbors, except in a conventional serious war, they're going to have trouble against Iran. They're going to need our help. I don't think they could take on Iran by themselves. The second problem, long or midterm, is demographic in the U.S. That kind of the boomer generation are dying off, and the new people coming up aren't pro-Zionist. In fact, be quite hostile to Zionism. And so I think Israel sees their time running out, the clock ticking, and they need to go after Iran, try to go after Iran before, say, Iran gets nuclear weapons, which they may or may not already have. And so I think and I think they want it now. And I think this is what Hezbollah, and Iran have been going slow, not retaliating, playing really soft, showing a lot of apparent weakness by not responding to the provocations. But I think that unfortunately we're now getting into a cycle of reciprocal violence. They can't just there's a limit to how a human can just keep taking it. I mean, they were scoring propaganda wins. There's lots of victim kind of, which is true. I mean, they're slaughtering women, children. Recently on the Lebanese channels, they have all these beautiful pictures of the dead victims. It's just horrifying. But Hezbollah has the weaponry. They can hurt Israel, and they've shot rockets into like open space. Started some grass fires. It's hard. I mean, we don't know. Maybe they have hit a couple intelligence things. We wouldn't know, but it doesn't seem like they've done much yet. And the Iran thing, as was mentioned, it was kind of like a show retaliation. To me, it was coordinated with the U.S. And it was just kind of kabuki theater in a way, just because they wanted to get it out. And I think Iran has been talking to the U.S. and kind of building a relationship, at least with the Democratic Party, following Obama's deal with Iran in 2014, after which Trump, I think one of his biggest mistakes was to break that deal. And on Russia, I mean, I read a lot of things. It's not clear. Russia, they make a lot of visits to Tehran. Their defense industry is coordinating with the Iranian defense industry. Supposedly, they're going to give them some S-400 systems, air defense systems, which are top notch. And so, but it's all ambiguous. It's not clear. So I think Israel sees the clock ticking, and they need to make a big move. now before the election. With Trump, I just don't. Yes, he's very flamboyant, pro-Israel. But does Israel want him to be the face of, the Jewish state? Because Trump is so hated around the world, whereas Biden's like the good cop, and Harris, they're like the good Americans. And so, yeah, I don't know how that's going to work if Trump wins. But from all his rhetoric, um, and I have to agree, I like Tucker's resolution to they're just not that important, Israelists. There was someone else who would say they're like the size of Albania. We don't care about Albania. Why do we care about Israel? So that might be pushing it a little bit, but I like those
it's
arguments.
interesting. One implication of the idea that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, like there can be no difference, is if the U.S. were to withdraw aid completely from Israel, that would objectively, and you believe that they really need us or need us, to have their back, and they're facing an existential threat without us, then this kind of like we have no dog in the fight, isolationist, why is it our business, is or can be construed as objectively anti-Semitic. You're deliberately putting the only Jewish state at risk. Play devil's advocate.
I know, but you
right?
have to look at the history of Zionism. It's absolutely there's conflating the Jewish people with Zionism is completely incorrect. They were like a little small radical movement. The Bundists were much more powerful. Or if you look at Winston Churchill's famous article about he was Zionist because he thought it was a choice between Bolshevikism or Zionism for the Jewish people, and he wanted to push them towards Zionism. It's never. There was recently a film of Israeli police beating Jewish protesters in Israel, like brutally attacking them, which is like Orthodox, with the hats and the beards. And so just saying that to be anti-Zionist is anti-Semitic is just not it's not even, it's a non-starter.
Yeah, it is a bit theoretically odd, right, that the most hardcore Jewish, the Zionists, are more critical of the Israeli state. So is the kind of only moderately Jewish person the one we should be taking our cues from, or the people who live for it every day, live and breathe it? Because it seems as if you go further down the Jewish rabbit hole, you end up in a somewhat critical of Israel space. So it's a little bit ironic.
Personally, I take my views from me or my reading of history. I mean, Jewish people are going to be all over the map, and that's their right. And so I don't know, and from America's point of view, which Jews are obviously a part of, an important part of, but we have to look at it from our point of view, understanding them, and then the rest of the Middle East. They're part of America. Lebanon, there's lots of Lebanese Americans, and so I think we just have to look at it with a strong knowledge of history, and a sympathy to understand why Israel came about. It's not like anti-Zionism is almost too strong. It's we can just be neutral in a sense. We don't have to support it. We don't have to fight it. Just like we're not pro-Albanian, we're not anti-Albanian. They just exist, and we accept that they exist. But I would take it along more of those lines.
If we had been so vigorously pro-Albanian, very overt about that for many decades, and then decided to be neutral, it wouldn't look very neutral. So that's the problem. It's kind of like when a corporation who had previously been neutral on political speech wades into political speech, and then they decided to become neutral again. The thing that prompts them to go neutral again then gives away a seeming politics. So
like on the optics.
Campuses, like after October 7th, a lot of them kind of wanted to get back into this. Oh well, we should just be politically neutral. We don't want our staff or anything to kind of weigh in on these matters. But after they'd already weighed in, then it speaks volumes that they want them to be quiet now. But I don't see how you'd have to. I don't see any way to get around that kind of growing pain, though, right? If you want to get back to a sensible neutrality, you're just going to have to.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be forced. If the Democrats win, their demographics, their people really, really are hostile to Israel. The rank and file, obviously the donor class, it's a whole different story, and they're the ones who write the book, set the rules. So, but it's gonna come, the change. It's just there's only so much they can swallow. Right now, it's great for the Democrats because they have Trump, the scary monster, the super pro-Zionist. But maybe next time it'll be someone more along the Tucker lines, someone more, more pro-American.
Yeah,
That'll be a challenge.
Trump was in the news the other day briefly for apparently saying something anti-Semitic. So they seem to leap on. I don't know what the specifics of that were, but I don't really buy that. I think he's just a very, very clunky communicator, and they end up saying a lot.
I could be wrong, but it was probably the speech he was giving. I think he gave a couple of speeches last weekend in which he said, "If you're Jewish, you have to vote for me because I support Israel." And so it was criticized as being anti-Semitic because he was suggesting that all Jews in America are pro-Israel and should be pro-Republican. And so it was kind of the inverse of what the Democrats and the Democrats and progressives who have been anti-Zion. So they're saying that he is just treating every Jew in America as a monolith, and that's anti-Semitic. Just like when Joe Biden went on that radio show and say, if you're not voting for me, you ain't black, man.
Exactly. That's what he's doing. He's mirroring that.
So you say, oh, that was
racist. It's a weird way to get to anti-Semitism by being philo-Semitic. I love Israel so much that I want Jews to be associated with it.
Yeah,
Trump allows no ambiguity. Everything's black or white. That's
So, Kelley, back in the 2000s, the American Enterprise Institute loomed large, and you're over there in the DC area. What is it that they're up to now? Has October 7th kind of breathed new life into their entire mission statement? Because I remember them basically being a kind of foreign policy oriented think tank overwhelmingly, but they had a kind of domestic, market oriented sort of division, if you will, as well. But so what's AEI doing now?
Well, I think AEI started losing its foreign policy oomph or bona fides after the failed wars of Iraq and Afghanistan. And it seemed to me, just watching them from a distance, was that they were shifting their policy priorities to more domestic and economic, trade, education, healthcare issues, more free market, I would say libertarian, but just open market solutions for domestic issues. And they were staying, or they just weren't putting as much resources and energy into the foreign policy portfolio. I remember at a certain point, I would say probably amid the COVID or pre-COVID time, there had been this rush in Washington to shift gears and talk about global authoritarianism, going after Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin, and this threat that authoritarian right-wing governments were in ascendance, and that somehow required yet another American response in the form of a quote war. And they had partnered up with the Center for American Progress. And I hope I am not misspeaking here because this is a while ago, which is a very progressive organization in Washington. They had found common cause, and the common cause were these terrible, evil right-wing governments, and that was the new threat. And I thought that would sort of like breathe new life into their foreign policy shop, but it really didn't. They've kept a low profile. I think after October 7th, you've seen your familiar faces like Danielle Pletka, who's still around, getting very assertive, if not aggressively pro-Israel and in the commentariat. But and so I feel like the neoconservative voices that have remained there have gotten a little louder because of the circumstances, but they really haven't been a major player in the foreign policy conversation in Washington. I feel like they've just kind of faded a little bit into the background, which I'm not sad about, given how much they had affected, pushed, and were cheerleaders for the global war on terror. I'm happy to see them sort of recede into the mists